My name is Dakota, and I am the head of growth at a company called Hopper. So Hopper is an app. We're mobile only, and it helps users book their trips. So to date, it has mostly been about helping users make informed purchasing decisions with their flights. So we do that by processing hundreds of billions of dollars of flights each month to build a contextual recommendation engine of sorts that gives users the context on their trip and tells them whether it's a good time to buy or whether they should keep waiting. And we do that through a conversation. So users come to Hopper 4 months in advance, and they tell us where they're going and when, which is a very strong signal of intent, of course, and they sign up for push notifications. We then buzz their phone 42 times over the next 4 months with advice on their trip. That could be keep waiting, the prices are still not great, or an example that's seen here, wow, this is a really great price, now is the time to book your trip. 90% of our sales come directly from these push notifications. So that's kind of interesting when you contrast that with what a website might do. So in a website, the focus is typically on visits or user sessions. The transaction is actually expected to be completed in the same session. So that leads to a lower attribution windows, typically 3 to 5 days, common on the web. We look at the lifetime of the user because we're fairly confident that we can reach that user on their personal device over the next 4 months, 5 months, next 2 years. We've had some success with this business model. So we've had over 20 million users install our app to date in the last 3 years. We launched exactly 3 years ago. Those users have planned 50 million trips in our app, and we've sold $600 million of travel to those users. On some days, that success looks like this. In January, we've averaged more installs per day than Airbnb, United Airlines, Booking.com, Expedia, Priceline, TripAdvisor, you name it. And we've done that despite those guys collectively outspending us 10,000 to 1 in digital marketing. We actually don't spend any money on Google search ads right now. Last year, Priceline, Expedia, and TripAdvisor spent $10 billion. So when you think of those guys in terms of from a supplier distribution perspective, you think of them as much larger companies than a new upstart like Hopper, and rightly so. They have a lot of sales. I mean, they sell hundreds of billions of dollars of travel collectively per year. But if you believe that the future of travel distribution will be in the mobile app ecosystem, which we do, well, we're actually one of the larger companies there. And with the exception of Uber, Lyft, and Airbnb, most of these OTAs actually don't have product market fit for their apps, because what they've done is recreate a website on a smaller screen. This is a visualization of our sales. So our current run rate right now is $500 million of travel sales annually, 100 million of which will originate outside of the US. So there's a lot of long-haul trips there, a lot of inbound to and from the US, crossing borders. And we're selling that to a somewhat unique travel audience. 62% of the users are millennials, 90% are leisure travelers, 52% are traveling abroad. But these aren't, while they are price sensitive because they are leisure travelers, so price does play a role in their purchasing decision, it's not the only motivating factor for their booking. You see that with the average incomes around $70,000. So what happens when you have 20 million millennial users who have signed up for 42 push notifications to let you influencing their purchasing decision? You can do some pretty cool things. So last year, we spent a lot of time working on our contextual recommendation engine. So for an example of that, so say a user is in New York and they're watching a trip to Honolulu. Instead of communicating to them about Honolulu 42 times, we will still give them advice about Honolulu, of course. We might also send a push notification that says, what about Bermuda in September? It's a great deal. Or what about traveling to Miami or a Caribbean island? And we do that because we're trying to think like a human to understand the context of the trip. Are you really going to Honolulu, or are you going on a beach vacation? Today, 20% of our sales come from these recommendations. That means we sell over $100 million of travel per year that the user never searches for in our app. We just recommended that they buy it. Another way to look at this is that Hopper's algorithm is 2.5 times more likely to predict what the user wants to buy and the trip that they want to go on, even to the extreme of the destination they're traveling to, than the traveler themselves. So when you think of that in the context of that New York to Hawaii example, a user is actually 10 times more likely to buy a trip to Florida or the Caribbean than Hawaii. why is this relevant, right? This is a hotels conference, mostly been talking about air. It's relevant because Hopper, all right, we now have hotels and we are selling them. So we have launched in New York as our test market, but we are launching in the 5 largest destination markets in North America this spring, with more to quickly come. And the animation in the middle there is an example of the vertical video content, almost Instagram story-like, that our in-house production team has been producing for hotels in New York. And we think that's really interesting because it's a familiar format for our millennial travelers, but it's also very friendly for the mobile phone because it's vertical, whereas most content up to date has been horizontal. So when you think of Hopper, to date it's been a North American flights prediction app, but what we're really aspiring to be is the way that travel is booked on the phone for everyone, everywhere in the world. Why do we think we can do that? Well, our air shopping data is an almost exact match for the dates that users shop for hotels in the destination 90% of the time. So we know where users are going and when that far in advance. And that's really powerful when you consider that our users plan 150,000 new trips in our app each day. So to reiterate that, 150,000 times a day, a millennial leisure traveler will open the Hopper app and they will plan a trip. They will tell us where they're going and when, 4 months in advance. They will sign up, give us permission to buzz their phone 42 times, and 20% of them don't even know where they're going yet. So when you consider that from a hotel sales, distribution, or revenue management perspective, it's really interesting to think about because our average length of stay is 6 days. Users are planning their trips very early, so the bookings take place months before a trip date, and 20% of them don't even know that they were going to your destination. And when you think of Hopper as a channel, think Hopper does not compete with your website because we don't have a website and we don't participate on Google search. So if that sounds interesting, we're outside, but thank you.